Okay. So seeking samsaric pleasure here, what are the samsaric pleasures? So this verse talks about how to train in the common path of the person of the medium scope. We already discussed last week the how to train in the common path to that of the person of the lower scope. Now here medium scope. So the samsaric pleasure here refers to the samsaric place, the samsaric body, one's body, and then the material resources, all the material resources. So these are samsaric, pleasures. So seeking samsaric pleasure is to draw to all the suffering. Now, how all the seeking samsaric pleasure as the door to all the suffering. Now, the samsaric body, the samsaric place, and the samsaric resources, wealth or material resources. We, the samsaric beings, we consider these things as pleasurable. So, although these are not pleasurable, but we consider them as pleasurable. Because we consider them as this as a pleasurable, so then in reality these are not pleasurable, but we consider them as pleasurable, and it is not pleasurable. It is in the nature of suffering. Right? Now it is in the nature of suffering. Because why it is in the nature of suffering is because all these, what we enjoy, samsaric body, samsaric place, and the samsaric, wealth, all this comes from what? All this comes from craving. Where does craving come from? The craving comes from ignorance. So ignorance gives rise to the craving. Craving gives rise to the what? Craving gives rise to the this, samsaric pleasure. Samsaric pleasure, although not pleasurable, but still considered as pleasurable. Because of that, it gives rise to suffering. So it gives rise to suffering. Because it gives rise to suffering, they are uncertain. They are uncertain and cannot be relied upon. Now, cannot be relied upon. They are uncertain. Now, this in order, first let me read. They are uncertain, cannot be relied upon. Recognizing these shortcomings, please bless me to generate a strong wish for the bliss of liberation. So now they cannot be relied upon. Why they cannot be relied upon is because it is in the nature of the suffering, right? It is in the nature of the suffering. Because it is in the nature of the suffering, they cannot be relied upon. And they are also not certain. Now we can talk about the the reason why they are the pleasurable experiences and the samsaric pleasures are uncertain. Why they are uncertain is because it gives rise to suffering, and because it gives rise to suffering, they are uncertain. Now, in what ways they are uncertain is because now we can talk about the 8 types of suffering. There are 8 types of suffering, and also there can be 6 types of suffering, and also there can be 3 types of suffering. There are different kinds of suffering in this world. Now, for example, the first one is the suffering, indefinite suffering. The first one, indefinite suffering, means now, for example, in early part of life, one is successful, then later part of life, one decline, go through decline. In the early part of life, one is very youthful, one's body very strong, youth, and then decline comes. Even in early part of life, and even then in the morning, one is very peaceful, very happy, and then in the evening, one is disturbed. So it's indefinite. Everything is indefinite, And then in the early part of life, for example, like business very good, then later part of life, something goes wrong. So this is indefinite shortcoming of samsara. The first one this is, and then the second one is how to say, not satisfied, discontented. The shortcoming of discontented. The shortcoming of discontented is, now what? If we have now, for example, if we have one house, we need 2 houses. If we have 1 car, we need 2 cars. If we have $100, we need $500. If we have $500, we want $1,000. So like this, we are not satisfied. So this is the third types of suffering. How to say? Third type of kind of shortcoming of samsara. And then the third one is now we cannot take one body and then live forever in one place. We cannot do like this. Once we take birth, we will die. So our body gets old. The moment we are born, we get closer to death. So, then when we die, everything is not finished. Again, we have to take a new rebirth. So, you keep on, it's like, taking a rebirth is like changing our clothes. One time we have clothes, and then we change, and then again, we put new clothes and then change. So the death is like changing one's body. So this kind of suffering, shortcoming. Fourth, the second one is again, one taking one. Then while we take rebirth, we need to remain in the mother's womb. So there is a suffering. This is also kind of suffering. And then again and again, sometimes we held in high position, and sometimes we get a very lowly job. So sometimes you are being praised, and sometimes you are criticized. One is criticized. So this again shortcoming of this. And then sometimes companion, what we call as companion. Sometimes you have to remain without companion. So all this suffering. So there are these are 8 types of suffering. So because this so this is the general suffering. The general suffering of the samsara. Now, if we think about the specific suffering of the samsara, then we have the how we have the suffering of the 3 unfortunate realm and 3 favorable rebirth. Favorable. Wherever we take rebirth, there is no real happiness. No, there is no genuine happiness. let alone, that, we know the suffering of the hell. There are eight hot hell and 8 cold hell. So this is suffering, this kind of suffering. And then we take birth as a hungry ghost. Hungry ghosts, they remain, so they search food. They are in search of food for many, many years, without getting even a small piece of food. They remain hungry for almost, many, many years, with their, there are different kinds of hungry ghosts, like, they neck like needle, and very, very big stomach, and then they, all the limb very, very thin, thin. So they, even digestion very, very difficult, even they get food, they digest, very difficult to go through the neck, because their neck is like the, needle neck. And then when they get up, they do like this, they have a great pain, they, all the joints, making the sound of cracking. So this kind of, great deal of suffering for the hungry ghost. And then animal, we know animal, this very stupid nature, they remain, and who is the enemy and who is the friend, they do not identify. This very, no chance to learn something, but then through training, they can learn something, but, volunteer, they cannot learn. So it is through, using the force, they learn, So there is a very, in the animal kingdom, there is stupid nature, they do not know what is right, what is wrong. So this kind of suffering, go through this kind of suffering. And then in the human, we have the suffering of getting what we don't want, the suffering of, getting all what we do not want, the suffering of not getting what we want, and all. Then there are a lot of suffering, the suffering of, facing with the enemy, the suffering of facing with danger, and then the suffering of facing with losing the job, and all that different kinds of suffering. But mainly the suffering of birth. And then the suffering of birth, there are a lot of problems, there are a lot of suffering, the process of going through suffering. It says, in the Buddhist text, it says, the small, the small newly born child, although the mother used very soft, soft kind of cloth to place, to wrap around the newly born child. But what happened is the child never, feel comfortable. He feels comfortable like, the thorns piercing his skin. This kind of suffering, And then while in the mother's womb, the mother eats something, all this, he feels tremendous pain, Even little movement bring him, like the feeling like falling from the mountain, high cliff. This kind of suffering while in mother's womb. Even mother take a very warm water, immense, hot in the baby, and then the small, cold water impact like the ice. The baby, the womb feels like the ice. So then, even they are rushing like this, moving like this. The child is being thrown away. So this kind of suffering. So this explain the text, Buddhist text, And then, this is the the suffering of the birth, and then the suffering of the and then the suffering of the sickness. Then when we do not want suffering, we do not want how do we know we do not want suffering? Because when we get sick, we go to hospital. So this shows we do not want the suffering of sickness. But then suffering of sickness comes. The suffering of sickness comes not because there is no cause and condition. Even the food, that the food is for the survival of our life, but then food poisoning make us sick. So that there are many causes which make us feel sick. Not only sick, there are two kinds of sick: mental sick and physical sick, right? So there are the kind of sickness. We have the problem of then the suffering of sickness. Sickness. We do not want the suffering of sickness, but it comes. Because we have no control. And we have this body. Once we have taken this body, and then the problem comes. This is the nature. This is the nature. So then, if we do not have this body, then no problem. We do not get any sick. We do not get old age. We do not take birth. So there is a sickness of the suffering of sickness. And then the suffering of old age. One Tibetan master, he write a very good poem about that. The old age, how we get old age, and then the suffering of old age. We see, when we are old, we want to hear music. Even we cannot hear the music very well. Very nice music. Even we want to taste good food, but then because we have no power to taste. Because of old age, we do not, taste very good. We do not feel the taste. Even, some people, do something and once get irritated because one get disturbed. And then, when we are young, there's some, the people playing around, doing, some kind of playing of music. We are no problem. But then when we get old, all this, we feel like mess. When old, and then when we cannot do in the same way as when we were young, when we get old, And then what happens is, sometimes you want to stay very lonely, and then you feel sometimes one need to feel lonely. Sometimes, what happens is, so they seek, companion. So sometimes they, in the they advertise for, we need some companionship. So they pay one net, they pay. So this is the problem of old age, There are many problems. And even if one get, try to, get up, one cannot get up very fast, So you have to use all your limbs, to support oneself. And then, it's about one way to get old, it's like kid, they, somebody has to feed oneself, So this is the suffering of the old age, like this. And then, now what really, when we get old, now what really help is, dharma practice. Only dharma practice help. Otherwise, very difficult to pass one's time, We try to go to sometime garden, we try to go, when we get old, we try to do that, we try to go outside and do something, But then we cannot do all this time every day, So then, if we have dharma practice, if we know how to do meditation, at least, when we get old, of course, we have something to do. We feel ourselves, fresh. We feel ourselves happy by doing some kind of meditation, like this. And then for some, people, when they get old, young couple, not young couple, old couple, what they do is because they have difficulty in passing the time, so they go outside for sightseeing, for vacation like this, not, knowing how to, how to make, one's inner resources full and useful and purposeful. So that's the problem. So one of the, so if we are, when we are young, when we are very young, when we are well trained in meditation, when we are well trained in Dharma study, then, we have, when we get old, we have plenty of things to do. Plenty of things to do. No, no problem of passing the time, no difficulty in passing the time, even we get difficulty in getting the extra time when we get old, if you know how to do the meditation, how to visualize, how to think, about the like this. And then we have then finally the suffering of death. So this is how to say. So this suffering is quite heavy. Heavy means some. I heard some saying oh, we don't need about the suffering of death. And we have been doing all this since beginningless lifetime. We have been going through the process of death since beginningless time. So why worry and why feel afraid of the death in this way? So this I think not well thought, not a well thought kind of saying. Because now what happened? We have been taking a rebirth since beginningless lifetime. Now the question is not about the need to feel afraid of death. The real question is, can we take a favorable rebirth next life? Can we make something very meaningful out of this life and purposeful out of this life? Can we make some guarantee that we take a good rebirth? So that's the question. It's not about no afraid of death like these things, because if we are not well prepared, if we are not well prepared, if we are not that confident, little confident or convinced about good and favorable future rebirth, then of course it is it makes sense that we don't need to afraid of death. But then we are not if we are not well prepared, then frighten comes. So it's not easy to say that we don't need to feel afraid of death. So in order to stop the sense of frightened during the time of death, so right now everything is in our hand. Everything is in our hand, We can take a very wonderful, favorable rebirth, very good rebirth. In the same way as we do the pray, like this. So then, suffering of death, you go through how we go alone, So at the time of death, only Dharma practice will be of immense help. Other than Dharma practice, nothing will help, Or even the very precious body, the very precious treasure body, and the precious body that we have, all have to leave behind, and we cannot carry even the body that we cherish so much. We cannot carry nothing except the Dharma practice that we have practiced in this very life. So this will be of great help. And then, of course, if we are not afraid of that, then at least someone who is a practitioner who is not afraid of that, then he is a good practitioner. That is good practice and good practitioner. He or she, he himself or she herself is a good practitioner. At the time of death, if we have no regret, also wonderful practitioner. And then whenever death comes, take a delight in the death, the best practitioner. So the practitioner can be decided or determined by how one look at the death, how one look at the death, right? This one. And then, of course, that's why it is very, very important to think about the teaching on emptiness, because what happens is, or to some people, they don't afraid of death, because some practitioner, they are not afraid of death. Because they know how to handle the death. This is one thing. Another thing is, if someone really led a very meaningful life, then death, of course, the frightening comes, but not too strong, but not too strong frightened. Then the question is, the reason why we are afraid of death is because we feel our physical aggregate, our body is I. Our body is I. Now, for example, very easy example, very simple example. For somebody, if they say, if some dead people is really have some understanding and good practice the teaching, some good understanding about the teaching, that person remain undisturbed. But then for those who are concerned only for this life, and do not have any idea about the spirituality and religion or dharma, when we say, the doctors say you have a cancer, you have 1 week to stay. if that person, the doctor say like this, the person gets frightened. Because why get frightened is because we normally, not only most of us believe that our physical aggregate is self, I. So now all of a sudden the person thinks, now where I will be, I would disappear, I would discontinue, I would disappear if my body gets separated from I, from me. So there is so the person feels their separation of self from the body. So they get frightened like this. So anyway, yeah. So these are the the suffering of all, suffering of the death, the suffering of birth, suffering of sickness, the suffering of old age, the suffering of death. And then, so this is what the suffering of the human birth. Then we take a suffering. We have the suffering of the God. And then we have the suffering of God, we are still not satisfied, There are, suffering of the God, there are two kinds of God, One is called, what is called a jealous God. And then jealous God, and one is upper God, superior form of God. So jealous God, the jealous superior form of God and jealous God, they all battle all the time. They battle. So then, because we believe there is a one tree, tree growing from the, growing from the root is in the jealous God, the root, but the fruit goes to the superior form of God in the place to the superior form of God. So they, the demigod or jealous God, they do not get to enjoy the fruit. The fruit is all enjoyed by the celestial God. So they, they fought each other. And then sometimes what happens, the jealous God get defeated. They got defeated. And also, we call, the celestial goddesses of the jealous God, they took the superior form of God, took all the, female goddess, celestial goddess of the, jealous God. Again they, fought like this. Then there is a, the suffering. There's suffering involved. And then the superior God suffering, they are all, enjoy everything. Then at the time of death, what happens is, normally the body look very fresh, fresh, very young, their body very, very young, they don't need to use the perfume, the, self, perfume. And then they, extremely attractive, the goddess, the god and goddesses. And then the light also coming, the light. There is not a single, particle like, we need to take a shower, right? They don't have to. But then, when the death comes, the smell coming. The smell, very bad smell, begins to come. False smell begins to come. And then all the gods, they, how to cover their nose, they don't come. They don't, come near. And then they, take they even they want to do something, they use a very stick, the stick on which they hold and then give it to like this, by, covering the nose. Oh, we will pray for your, good rebirth and we will meet each other, like this, So they feel tremendous, kind of, then this God, feel tremendous amount of, tremendous despair, tremendous sad by this kind of act, manner, by other gods. So there's a kind of God. And then, in God, demigod, and then the human, there's all suffering. So whenever we take rebirth, whenever we take rebirth, there's no genuine happiness and pleasure experiences. All are in the nature of three suffering. Either suffering over suffering, either changeable suffering, either pervasive suffering. So these three kinds of suffering. Finding firm, so seeking samsaric pleasure as the door to all the suffering, they are uncertain and cannot be relied upon. They are uncertain, cannot be relied upon. Because the suffering comes from seeking pleasurable experiences. Of course, because the cause is what? The cause for suffering is impure. If the cause is impure, the result is impure. Because there is a suffering. Because the cause is what? Cause is karma and affliction. So the result is impure. There is suffering. They are uncertain and cannot be relied upon. Recognizing these shortcomings. So then, recognizing these shortcomings, please bless me to generate the strong wish for the bliss of liberation. Right? Now one has to understand this. Now what? Now the sense of liberation, a sense of liberation should be developed. A sense of liberation should be developed by reflecting on the defects and the shortcomings of samsara, and how the truth of the origin of suffering, led us to circle in samsara again and again, endlessly. So with this kind of reflection, now finally we want to get out from this, we want to get out from this kind of circling, revolving in this samsara. We want to renounce. We want to renounce from this suffering, and then seek the true liberation, genuine liberation. That is the ultimate bliss. That is the true bliss, blissful state. The unchanging, unchanging kind of unchanging bliss, unchanging pleasure by experience. Other than this, all the pleasurable experience that we can find, that can be found in this world, and that can be found in the samsaric existence, are uncertain and cannot be relied. Right. So seeking samsaric pleasures due to all suffering, it talks about the truth of the suffering. Buddha taught Four Noble Truths. So this talks about the truth of the suffering. Directly it talks about the truth of suffering, then indirectly it talks about the truth of the origin of the suffering. And now they are uncertain, cannot be realizing these shortcomings. Please bless me and generate strong wish for the bliss of them. So it talks about the truth of the path. Third noble truth. Buddha taught third noble truth. So it talks about the truth of the path. Now, if it cannot be relied upon, if they are uncertain, then what we can do? Then it says, do something. So do something to to achieve something better, something which is good for the whole lifetime, life after life. This only the liberation, the state of liberation, is the only one is certain and one can be relied upon, because this is the everlasting peace, eternal bliss, joy. There's no changing, there's no decline in this blissful state. Because once we destroy it, once we cut the root of the samsara, once we destroy the root of the samsara, then there is no more coming back. We are at the state of eternal peace. Recognizing these shortcomings, please bless me and generate the wish. So now, please generate the strong wish for the bliss of liberation, right? So now, again, when we, it talks about the transformation, mental transformation. When we talk about the mental transformation, it's not easy. It's not easy. Mental transformation is not that easy, One really, need to study, and one need to hear, one need to reflect, and then one need to meditate, and one need to purify one's negativity, one need to accumulate merit, one need to receive the blessing of the spiritual gurus. So through all this, one is transformed. Only one condition difficult. If everything is easy, if one condition can make the transformation, then the world should be full of filled with those wonderful persons who make the transformation through the teachings. But very in this, it's like star in the daytime. Seeing the person with the very good with the transformation of the mind, it's like seeing the star in the daytime. Quite difficult to find. And now what we need to do is here, please bless me to generate the strong wish for the bliss of liberation. Before we visualize something, in the space in front of oneself, which is, if you do the prostration, how far, your body reaches. Up to that strength, you visualize, Buddha Shakyamuni sitting on a throne, like a throne supported by lion, Buddha Shakyamuni stays seated on the throne, and then his right side surrounded by the Matriya Buddha, and those kind of extensive masters of the extensive lineage, and his left side is surrounded by the Buddhas of the Manjushri, wisdom Buddha, surrounded by the profound lineage masters of the profound path. And then in the middle, one visualizes the Buddha Vashathara, and then the great blessing masters, right? And then surrounded by all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Now in the Buddha Shakyamuni in the middle, and then below is his one's spiritual guru, one's root guru. And then one visualize this, and in each of these, matter field, one, on the near the table with that Buddhist text, text. One visualize this text, each of their, in the aspect of giving the teaching, their own teaching. And then one visualize, light rays coming from the matter field. It dissolved into one's body. It dissolved in all the sentient beings' body, including oneself. And then the nectar, nectar flows and dissolves into oneself and all the sentient beings. And then we think that all the negativities, all the negative karma that we have accumulated since beginningless lifetimes are all purified, are all gone, purified, right? Purified. And then your merit, your inner resources, your longevity, all are increased. After that, your body transformed into the light, transformed into the in the form of light, very light, transparent. Then you visualize the duplicate, the duplicate of each of the matter field being, come and dissolves into you, and then dissolves into you, and please bless me, generate the stone. So you have cultivated the bliss of liberation. You really think, now I have cultivated the sense of renunciation. I have cultivated the realization of renunciation. So this kind of feeling is important to do at this point. So it really helps. Led by this, now next page, led by this pure thought, mindfulness, alertness, and great caution arise. What? Yeah. Led by this pure thought, mindfulness, alertness, and great caution arise. The root of the teachings is keeping the Pratimoksha vows. Please bless me to accomplish this essential practice. Led by this pure thought, that means led by this pure thought, that means now this led by this pure thought, mindfulness, alertness, and great caution arise. So mindfulness, alertness, and great caution need to arise as a result of developing the sense of renunciation. Why? Why mindfulness, alertness, and the great question arise? Because, why need to? Because the shortcomings of samsara and the defects of samsara is very strong. Strong. Now what causes the defects of samsara? What causes the shortcomings of samsara? What is the root cause? Craving is the root cause. The craving gives rise to the shortcomings of samsara. Craving gives rise to the root of the samsara, right? Craving gives rise to the shortcomings of samsara and the defects of samsara. So, in the shortcomings of the samsara and the defects of the samsara, mindfulness, alertness is very strong. Mindfulness, alertness, and great caution is very strong. Whereas in the training, in the morality and training in the ethics, the mindfulness, alertness, great caution is very not strong. Cannot be strong. So we need to apply a mindfulness, a strong mindfulness, a strong alertness. Because on the other hand, the shortcomings, mindfulness very strong, alertness very strong. We are very alert, when engaging in the, the shortcomings. Although we voluntarily do not engage, although we intentionally don't engage, but then through craving we engage. But through craving we then, engage in the defense of the samsara, the shortcoming of the samsara. What are the shortcomings? The prosperity of the samsara. So that is caused by, craving, right? So led by this pure thought, mindfulness, alertness, and the great caution arise. The root of the teaching is keeping the pratimoksha vows. Please bless me to accomplish this essential practice. The root of the teaching is keeping the pratimoksha vows. Please bless me to accomplish this essential practice. Right. So why need to keep the pratimoksha vow? What it has to do with the defects of samsara, shortcomings of samsara. Because now you see the craving, as we discussed, the craving is the root cause of root cause for the samsaric pleasure, for the quest for samsaric pleasure, seeking the samsaric pleasure. Craving is the root cause for seeking the samsaric pleasure. Now, if we train in the pratimoksha vow, what happens? If you train in the pratimoksha vow, pratimoksha vow, it stops seeking the samsaric pleasure. Because why it stops? If it stops seeking samsaric pleasure, it stops the craving. By training in pratimoksha vow, it stops the craving. If it stops the craving, it also stops seeking for samsaric pleasure. If it stops seeking for samsaric pleasure, then finally we are ended with suffering. Yeah.
Quick question. Where does the vows, the pratimoksha vow?
Yeah, I will explain. Yeah. This pratimoksha vow, now we have the 8 individual liberation vow. These are called as individual liberation vow, right? Because you want to achieve liberation oneself. That is very good, that is very good. Achieving some liberation for oneself, because all the problem comes from craving. So we want to cut, we want to make an end to that craving by developing, by seeking a liberation. And how to seek the liberation is by training in the Pratimoksha vow. Right. So now, when we talk about the 8 individual liberation vow, we have fully ordained first. The vow of the fully ordained monk, fully ordained nun. These two. And then what we call is novice, the vow of the male novice, vow of the female novice. 4. And then the 4. And then layperson, the vow of the female layperson, the vow of the male layperson, right? 6. And then 2 years vow. There is a vow called 2 years vow, and then there is a vow called 1 day vow. 8. So these are the 8, Pratimoksha vows. In Pratimoksha vows, out of these 8, 2, 3 are layperson vow. 3 are layperson vow, 5 are monk. How to say? Monastic vow. 3 are layperson vow. Any layperson can take it. So this is, so by training in Pratimoksha vow, one then, come to, one then, the craving is reduced. When the craving is reduced, and then the seeking for samsara pleasure is also reduced. When it is reduced, then finally we will have less problem, less trouble, less suffering. So that is the point, why need to train the Pratimoksha vow. Please bless me to accomplish this essential practice. So we do the same visualization as we done before. Right? Again, the layperson vow, all the individual 1 day vow, there is a 1 day vow. During the very auspicious day, we take the 1 day vow. It's very good. For that is mostly for layperson. They can take 1 day vow. Or they can take, 1 day vow is simple, simple, but then it creates a tremendous amount of merit by observing just a 1 day vow. Because they are layperson who cannot, take the layperson vow for the whole lifetime. So Buddha, make a 1 day vow. And then, like layperson vow, which is for the lifetime. And then we have, and then we have also Bodhisattva vow, and then the tantric vow. Bodhisattva vow, once, degenerate, you can take it, no problem. It's very flexible. And also tantric vow, once we degenerate, but then we take it. Again, there's no problem. Individual liberation vow, once, finish their span, time span, once finish their term of time span, it can, it is automatically, the strength is decline. It cannot be retake. It cannot retake. For 1 day vow, you want to take it tomorrow, and then next day, and then you are done, and then you can take another time. So it's like this. Just as I have fallen into the sea of samsara, so have all mother minority beings. Bless me to see this train in supreme bodhicitta and bear the responsibility of freeing minority beings. So this is now training in the path of the higher beings, superior beings, training in the path of those superior beings, the person of the superior capacity, higher capacity. Just as I have fallen into the sea of samsara, so have all Maya Maharaja. This is right. We are fallen into the sea of samsara. We are fallen into the sea of samsara. So have all Mother Maharaja beings. Bless me to see this train in Supreme Bodhicitta and be responsible for freeing minority beings. When we see the suffering of others, it gives rise to compassion. When we see the suffering of ourselves, it gives rise to the sense of renunciation. Right? So the suffering can be, suffering can do two functions, different functions. One is directing to the suffering of others, it gives rise to compassion. Directing to the suffering of oneself, it gives rise to a sense of renunciation. Now, one of the important things is to understand is, when we what makes us develop a sense of renunciation? What makes us a sense of renunciation? What makes us, renounce everything? Of course, we see the different types of suffering. We see the suffering of others, We see different types of suffering. We can see, the beings going through the endless suffering. And then it gives rise to the sense of renunciation. Right? We go through the problem ourselves. We go through different kinds of problem, one after the another, in different ways. Last year one problem, this year another problem, next year another problem, like this. Again we, these different kinds of problems. Sometimes getting sick, and sometimes not, physically not well, and sometimes, getting what we do not want. Sometimes, not getting what we want. So there are different kinds of suffering. Sometimes your job is not good, and sometimes we are not well paid off, different. And then we have a problem with the friends, we have the problem with other people, the boss ones. So there are different kinds of problems. So these problems, these suffering, states of suffering are, not the main to change, not the main which can give rise to a sense of renunciation. So of course, in this help, by reflecting on these different types of suffering, it helps to develop, but not the main one. What is the main cause for us to develop the sense of strong renunciation is, by understanding our nature as pervasive suffering, how we are tormented, how we go through the pervasive suffering. So this is the main. Now, what is pervasive suffering? This is difficult. Because we talk about three levels of suffering. One is suffering of suffering. Suffering of suffering, the some, when we have some problem, this suffering of suffering, Again, we make it extra suffering. Suffering of suffering. And then the suffering will change, Suffering will change, So this is what, most people believe to be pleasurable suffering. Now, for example, first when the sun is very, when we are cold, when we feel cold, now we go outside and, swimming, go for swimming, we enjoy. And then, what happened? Then we again, first is a little bit, feel some kind of pleasurable experiences. But then, we are too, again we feel cold because swimming for too long. Right? First, the food, for example, again the food, we enjoy, the food is very good, and then we eat too much, then it causes. Now, first suffering, then immediately change into suffering. This changeable suffering. The last one is pervasive suffering. Pervasive suffering is definition of pervasive suffering. The suffering which pervades the three realm: desire realm, form realm, formless realm. A kind of suffering which pervades in the three, realm is called the pervasive suffering. Or pervasive suffering, once five aggregates. Once five aggregates can take as a perfect example for pervasive suffering, because we have this body, which serve as a basis for developing the suffering of suffering and changeable suffering. So changeable suffering and pervasive suffering comes because we have this body. If you do not have this body, suffering of suffering don't come, suffering of change does not come. But because we have this body, these two other suffering comes as a basis. So it is finally pervasive suffering which give rise to all the problems. Right? So now, if we really seek a sense of liberation, we are circling, we are revolving in the five aggregates. Form aggregates, feeling, discrimination, composite and mental. So these five aggregates we circle. We take rebirth. We take circle means rebirth. We take rebirth on this, five aggregates again and again and again and again in the endless way. By what? Karma and affliction. Karma and affliction are the main cause. Karma and affliction are the main cause which make us revolve and circle into these five aggregates, again and again. So now we want to make an end to this circle, and this circle by what? By seeking a liberation, genuine liberation, a genuine kind of nirvana. So by you are fed up of this kind of circle. You are fed up of this kind of circle. You want to get out from this circle and seeking a genuine, peaceful and something eternal bliss. Right? So so again we need to think over this again. How we are tormented. We have taken a rebirth in this beginner's lifetime as a human birth, as a god, and as a hungry ghost, but nothing provides us something eternal peace, eternal bliss, eternal peace, something really genuine and meaningful peace that we can trust. But ultimately, nothing can be relied, uncertain, cannot be relied, unreliable. So this time we have taken the precious human rebirth. So we need to make best use of this time to at least, to do something. We don't know in the next life how we are going to proceed like this. So clearly recognizing Oh, yeah, just as I have fallen into the sea of samsara, so have all my other migrant beings. Bless me to see this train in bodhicitta and be the responsible of migrant beings. I have fallen into samsara. Now, you, again, this make a very important point. This, words make a very important point. How we are going to, is it one's responsibility to free all mother sentient beings? Is it one's responsibility? It is one's responsibility. Now, for example, we see we see other people going through suffering, but then when we see somebody in suffering, then biologically we want to help. We want to help, biologically, because we say we are human being. We want to do something. We want to help other, right? We want to help other. But then this suffering, other people going through suffering, when we see other people going through suffering, we want to separate them. We really want to do something, but of course to some extent, but not powerful. No matter how much painful experience the other person, the sentient beings are going through, how much other sentient beings go through tremendous suffering. You want to do something, we want to do something, but not strong. We can sure. Why not strong? No. If we really train, if we really want to do something, if we really want to train in the right, if we really want to make a right transformation, so that is the very important to understand the whole teaching of the Buddha. So this is what again the great master, one great master, he says, just by wanting to to do something not strong, he said, very true. Now you go through the, we understand how we circle in samsara, how we go through the process of, suffering. We really think about how I'm suffering. Based on one's own experience, based on our own experience, if I'm suffering 50%, based on my own experience, now we think the other people are in the same experience of suffering, going through the same experience of suffering. Now, based on your own experience, now we want to really free that suffering. Very strong, perfect strong, like this. So this is how we train in the path, So just based on one's experience, right? It's very, very strong, Yeah. Just as I have fallen into the sea of samsara, so have all my other minority beings. Bless me to see this train in supreme bodhicitta. So have all the minority beings, mother sent beings, are going through suffering, are in the nature of suffering, are going through suffering, are tormented by suffering. So we know this, when we need to see the suffering of other people, although, we talk about the suffering, there are a lot of suffering other people can go through. We do see the sentient beings going through suffering. But the ultimate suffering is, they have to take rebirth again and again by karma and afflictions. And they circle in samsara. Of course, this is a place, our world is the place. So they take rebirth in the world again and again. But finally, they are circling in their own fire aggregates. In their own fire aggregates, they circle again and again. So we need to make an end to it. And want to place them in some eternal blissful state. So that is Buddhahood, enlightenment. So have all migratory beings. Bless me to see this train in Supreme Bodhicitta and bear the responsibility of freeing mother sentient beings. So now it talks about, now it is not enough to see the suffering. It is not enough wishing to liberate sentient beings from the suffering. Now I have the responsibility. Now why? Because now we say all sentient beings has been once mother. All sentient beings has been once mother since beginner's lifetime, just like the present mother. How the present mother, how the present mother care for oneself, similarly the other sentient beings too. The stranger, one's enemy. Somebody becomes one's enemy because of some reason. Because of some reason. Again, because of some reason, somebody becomes one's enemy. But then the person cannot remain enemy as an enemy forever. Just like one's close one, this lifetime, somebody becomes very close one, but then who knows, the person can become, one's enemy, we say. Similarly, the present enemy, who knows, the present enemy can be one's, closest one, can be the most benefactor for you, for oneself. So we don't know, So this is how we train, So the present mother did very, care for you, provide for everything. Similarly, all the sentient beings, whether stranger, whether close one, whether enemy, and everybody, has been a great kind for you since beginner's lifetime. But we do not know this, we do not understand this, so we need to train in this, Now we use then here, Now we need to see the, past life. We need to understand the past life. If once we are able to prove the existence of past life, then, all sentient beings have been one's mother. It's easy.
Just a question, how can you prove it?
How
can you prove it?
Sentient being?
No, the past lives.
Past life? Oh, there are a lot of reasons.
For a person that is skeptical. For a person that is skeptical of past lives.
Past life? Oh, proving past life, a lot of, reason. Very a lot of many reasons. I will tell you few reasons. And then there are many stories, a lot of stories, proving the existence of past life. In the one family, there are two kids, two kids. In one family, two kids. One is very intelligent, one is dull. Yeah, how come this? This proves past life. One child very compassionate, one child want to do something negative thing. From the small child, no need to teach. This proof past life. And then in the some pond, in the some lake, we see small insect, some insects, then they stay in one group, but some insect round, some rectangular, some circular shape, some square shape. Why? This proof past life. And then if you take notice, if you container put some water, put some food, right, leftover food, you remain put in a hot sun in the outside. After a few days you open, insects, worms. You see the worms, past life exist. And then in some, for example, in the tree, when you cut down the tree, in this, inside the tree, you can see the animal proof past life.
You were talking about the other day about the sample of container, and they just appeared out of nowhere. But I can't remember that explanation. How did they come to be? Those worms or animals on a container that didn't come from an egg or a seed. They like spontaneous.
That's why I'm saying, I have this experience. In the monastery, the very hot weather. So we leftover food, in the container we tightly kept. And then after a few days, we forget to clean up, and then we all the worms inside. So there are four kinds of birth. Worm, egg, and the fully formed birth. We call fully formed birth. And then last one is moisture, heat, the birth through heat and moisture. So this in those worms that we do see in the container are heat birth or moisture birth.
So is the worm, egg?
Worm, egg,
Fully formed?
Worm, egg, heat, and fully formed. Human being, mostly worm, right? And then some animal, they like chicken, bird, they birth this egg. And then insects, small insects, small kind of worms. All these are heat. For example, what happens is when the there is small food, rice, for example, there's one rice, and then that rice has all the conditions, causes and conditions to to transform that rice into the body of the worm. And then when all the causes and conditions meet, and then the parto, intermediate state, the consciousness of intermediate state is unobstructed. It can travel through the metals, it can travel to anything, no obstructions. So when causes and conditions are very suitable, then this go inside. The consciousness of the Bharata, intermediate being, died, and then the consciousness go inside. No problem.
So the first is womb? The first one you said is womb?
Yeah.
Which is
egg, yeah, whatever, egg, egg, worm, in the stomach, thing, egg, worm. Yeah, this like this.
And the one I don't understand is fully formed?
Fully formed means, hungry ghost, Hungry ghost, there are different types, and then hell, hell being, those hell being,
That's only three.
Four. Warm, moisture or heat, moisture, egg, and then fully formed. There are four types of birth. Yeah. So, right. So it's a, then Then the best example for the proving the existence of past life is because some people died, and in this, in different people died, and they in meditation for 1 week, 2 weeks. Science has no explanation, So then, Buddhists, especially the Vajrayana teachings offer the explanation for this. This clearly proves the past life. This clearly proves the next life. Proving past life and next life, yeah. We mostly use the logic and reason to prove. But then if we say, my past life does not exist because we don't remember, we don't see, that is very not good example, reason. If that is the case, then we do say, your ancestor does not exist because you don't see. Like this. Because when we say past life exists, future life does exist, it not necessarily mean you have to see with your eye, We have to see with our own naked eyes. Yeah, there are a lot of things, there are a great number of phenomena that we cannot see. Even the heart and the kidney that we do have, we cannot see our own, except we see through, some kind of scanning like this. Otherwise, directly with our naked eye, we cannot see. So that's that. And then there are a lot of stories, those kids, children who remember their past life. And also, why don't we remember the past life? There again, in one of the teaching, it says three reasons. One is, in the 2 month, 9 months and 10 days in mother's womb, right? So the mother has to, the womb remain in mother's womb for 9 months, 10 days. So in the second month, the child remembers the past life, it says. Child remember the past life. But then after that, many of us don't remember past life. Because why? It is maybe the connection to the past life is severed at that time. The connection to the past life, the memory to the past life is connection. And this one is another reason, because in the mother's womb there are a lot of how to say impure mass in the mother's womb. This really how to say the mass it's very strong, so strong that led the child could not remember the past life after that. But in the second month, the child do remember. But after the 2 months is over, the child don't remember, no more recollect the past life because of the impure mass that the child feels the impact. So this is second reason. Other third I don't remember. Like this. So have all Mother Married beings blessed me to train in this. So training in Bodhisattva, there training there are two kinds. Very important. Training in according to the master Shantideva, and then training in accordance to the master Asanga. Asanga, he talks about 7-fold steps how to train in bodhicitta. He talks about the 7-fold step, and then there's a master Shantideva. He talks about training in cultivation of bodhicitta. Bodhicitta by means of equalizing self and others. How we can exchange self and others, equalizing that is equalizing self and others. Training this is the training how one can train in bodhicitta, the cultivation of bodhicitta. Bless me to see this training in supreme bodhicitta. So again, there are two kinds of bodhicitta. One is wishful bodhicitta, wishing, and one is aspiration, and one is the action bodhicitta. Bodhicitta, the wishing bodhicitta, just you want to achieve enlightenment for the benefit of all the sentient beings. This is a mere wish, and then it is not enough to have the wish. We all dreaming about something, wanting to do something, but then action is difficult. So now we need the action. If I am to achieve enlightenment, if we were to achieve enlightenment, we need to do something which led to the fulfillment of our goal, that enlightenment. So, in order to fulfill our goal for attaining enlightenment, now we need to do the action, that is training in the six perfections. By training in the six perfections, and then finally, after perfecting all these six perfections, paramitas, then we achieve enlightenment. And then when we achieve enlightenment, it is at that very point that we are in full potential and we are in full strength to serve others to the fullest, to bring the fullest benefit to all the sentient beings, only through engaging in action, only through doing action. So the training in six perfections, and bear the responsibility of freeing minority beings. So why we need to bear the freeing? Because all sentient beings have been one's mother. First, cultivation of bodhicitta. In order to cultivation of bodhicitta, we need to first train in the compassion. That is the altruistic, wanting to do something, and then wanting to do something comes from what? Comes from training in compassion. Training in the compassion comes from training in love. Training in love comes from training in love, and training in love comes from repaying the kindness of the mother. Repaying the kindness of the mother. Repaying the kindness from mother comes from what? Comes from repaying the kindness of the mother. Repaying the kindness comes from training in recognizing all sentient beings as one's mother. Recognizing all sentient beings as one's mother comes from understanding the existence of past life. So the first begins from one need to exist, one need to prove the existence of past life. When the existence of past life was proven, then easy, quiet. Then these things go very well. Otherwise, one need to make the foundation of building very concrete, stable. Then building don't collapse. So the foundations once the foundations make stable, then building don't collapse. So recognizing or proving or understanding the existence of past life is the first one. So then, when it comes to existence of past, proving the existence of past life, just intellectual understanding, very helpful. We need, and also we need the support of we need the merit support. We need to purify. We need to receive the blessings of the masters. With all this, so in many of the realization, internal transformation, we need to do all these things, without which can make effect, but not strong. So all this, many causes and conditions are necessary. Because sometimes, what we say, some people practicing very hard, practicing for a very long time, but we don't see, but externally, we don't see much transformation takes place. What we say is sometimes when the more we are learned, the more pride we, get. So then, something's missing. Something missing. We do study, we do some study and some no reflection. Some reflection, some no meditation. And some make purification, but then don't study. Some they, create merit, but no study and reflection. So something is missing. So then some, trying to do, again, do, some kind of practice like, praying for doing this, praying for Guru, Guru devotion, like these things. But then no, thinking no need, study is needed. But then, so for the right Dharma practitioner, for the right Dharma practice, Lama Tsongkhapa's system is study, reflection, meditation, all this in one go, and then, purification is necessary, accumulation of merit is necessary, and then the Guru devotion is necessary. All these are necessary. If one is missing, not that powerful. One is either of missing is missing. With all this, the result should come. Result should be expected. Yeah, because if all the causes are come together, you cannot, one cannot reverse. One cannot overcome the result. Once the causes are assembled, all the causes, necessary causes are met, one cannot reverse the result. One cannot overcome the result. It should happen. Because with the cause is, when the cause is created, result should come. This is the nature.
Inevitable?
Huh?
Inevitable? When you cannot avoid it?
No. You cannot avoid. The doctor asks us to do not eat this. And then we keep on eating this. And we already created the cause. And then doctor cannot, make the treatment. Once the cancer is developed, third stage cancer is developed, doctor cannot, because there's powerful causes. At the first stage, cancer at the first stage, of course, remove. Because the causes are not fully, matured. At the third stage, fully matured, burst now. The causes is already there, very powerful causes. That's why Buddha said, one is the protector of oneself, one is the savior of oneself, one is the destroyer of oneself. Buddha said this. Because ultimately it's up to you, it's up to oneself, not to blame others. We do a good practice, we really do very wonderful practice, we do a good practice, and then we do not want to go to we do not want to go to, some kind of, say, hell. And then even if somebody come and, push, you don't go. Because you have already created. We already discussed. There's one master, Tibetan master, Kadamba master in Tibet. He, the great practitioner of mind training. He once asked his students, now make the arrangement, make the offering to the three precious jewels. The students, the disciples told him, what happened? I haven't fulfilled my wish. Now I'm really worried. What kind of wish? Now I'm dying. I haven't fulfilled my wish. What kind of wish? The disciples raised the question. My wish is, my supplication prayer is, I want to take a rebirth in the lower limb. I want to take a rebirth in the hell to benefit the hell beings, to benefit them. Now, instead of taking a rebirth in the hell, I have the vision of paradise. I see that now I'm definitely going to the pure land. I'm not going there. I'm not fulfilling my wish. You see, then? So that he already created. Even if you make a wish, you don't go to hell. Because he created all the causes and conditions to take a birth over there. So that's why the great Indian master Dharmakirti, the great logician, he said, when all the causes and conditions are met together, nobody can avoid. Nobody can avoid. Even Buddhas cannot avoid. When all the causes and conditions are conditioned. Person commits suicide. Why? Because all the causes and conditions came together to, take suicide. Therefore, that's why we say craving, craving. When we are greatly accustomed to craving, when it reaches to the percentage of 100%, then nobody can avoid. Nobody can avoid the result. Because it's all in full strength, fullest, potential. So like this. And bear the responsibility of freeing the mind beings. So up to here we stop, and then we can continue with the remaining.